A title screen identifies the session as Do Not Harm, Engaging Parent and Kinship Families.
Hello, everyone. So glad that you're able to make it it's afternoon in central part of the United States. So I don't know where everybody's coming from, but we are so happy to have you here joining the session. My name, and we can actually change to the next slide, please. My name is Paula Bibbs Samuels, and we also have presenting Paula Beatty. And I am a family consultant with the Capacity Building Center for States, as well as a birth parent and kinship provider out of Region 6. And I'm from the grand state of Texas. And Paula, the other Paula, either way go, we're Paula's. She's also a family consultant with the Capacity Building Center for States. She's a birth parent. She's in Region 5 from Wisconsin. And so, again, we're so happy to have you here today. We expect this to be great because that's who we are. And we know that you are too. So, because we have a limited amount of time, we're going to jump right in. And hopefully, as people continue to come in, they will just, join this conversation in a listening session to begin with. But what I would like for you all to do, we're going to have a Mentimeter. And if you will put that link into the chat now, it will be great. But I would like to ask you all a question. And the question is, when it comes to engaging parents and kinship placements, what comes to mind? And this is going to be a word cloud. And so we are putting that Mentimeter link in the chat.
A participation question prompt appears on screen. When it comes to engaging parents and kinship families, what comes to mind? Then the words entered by participants in the live event appear in a real-time word cloud, with responses entered multiple times appearing larger to signify significance.
If you just click on that, you will be directed to this, and then you can just enter your words. And whatever words come to mind, we want you to put that in there. Important, absolutely. Family, authenticity. Paula, what words are jumping out to you?
I'm seeing compassion, necessary, understanding, humility. As the words get bigger, that means that the words have been stated more than once. So throw those into the Mentimeter, into the word cloud, please, in the link.
Yes.
Love.
Necessary. Yes. Oh,
Listening.
you all have some great words.
I saw something about peace in there, peace of mind. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
supportive.
Thank you all so much. Respect and compassion seem to be something that is a trending. I don't want to say trending. Yes, empathy.
Healing.
Great. Thank you all so very much. Thank you, Paula. Thank you all so very much for just participating in this. And it looks like respect, compassion, and empathy are the things, and love, that stand out the most right now. And so as we transition, Paula Beatty is going to talk to us about what we as bio parents need. Paula?
Thank you, Paula.
Video of the speakers begins and persists throughout the remainder of the session.
So we got Paula B and Paula BS. So, and we're going to say Paula PJB, and it's a little confusing, but my partner is wonderful. So know that if you have anything you'd like to contribute, questions you have, throw them in the chat. We're going to have some time at the end to be able to interact with you directly, but you're welcome to throw them in the chat and we will get to them. So how do we support birth parents and kinship providers? How do we do that? I'm going to talk a little bit about birth parents and what we need, what birth parents need. So first of all, as our title says, we really want to do no more harm. Right? The goal is healthy families. So understanding that even when a removal is warranted, it causes trauma for the family members, the children and the parents, even when it's warranted. Know that we parents, we love our children. And we're often bringing forth what we know about parenting, often attempting to parent in a less harmful way than we were parented. And still, no one is a perfect parent. All parents benefit from benevolent support. So what I'm going to ask of you is you'll need to check your biases about who we are, about who our families are, and what's getting in our way. make sure you're checking your biases. And when you get out of the way of judging and blaming us, we really will be more likely to get to the root of what we want and need to change in our parenting. Empathize with us. Parenting is the hardest job in the world. There's no perfection in parenting. I'm guessing there's been a time when your parenting has fallen short too, because there just is no such thing as a perfect parent. And let me know that you understand. Authentic empathy from you will support building of a trusting relationship between the two of us. Ask what we need to live our best lives, to flourish. Make sure the permanency plan requirements are relevant to our unique situation and that we've been included in the development of that permanency planning. You already know that already though, because it's a requirement for Title E4 funding that we be involved. So we know that you know that. Make sure the services that you recommend have availability and facilitate that soft handoff. Make the calls ahead of me, get that door open, offer support, either you or someone else going with me the first time. Make sure the services have offerings outside of traditional office hours to meet my unique needs. Make sure that I have access to transportation to get to that appointment. Gas cards, bus tickets, a cab that you set up, or drive me yourself. Make sure I get there. And how about asking me what I think would be helpful for me to meet the conditions of return? Make sure we parents have choices in how those conditions are met. For example, you say I need therapy, but therapy's never worked for me. So how about if I have peer support instead? Someone who specifically has been there, done that to support me in navigating this journey. What if I want a parent coach or a parent peer specialist in lieu of a parenting class? Let's be creative and flexible because we're not one size fits all humans. We all know that, trying on those leggings. And lastly, this is really important. Focus on what's going well. Focus on our strengths because what you water will grow and flourish. And I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Paula, to talk about kinship care now.
Thank you, Paula. And so, yes, kinship providers, there are so many different things that we need as kinship providers. We need support and resources. We need people to be available. We have to help kinship providers to navigate the system. We don't work for child welfare, so we don't know how that goes. So, when child welfare has to become involved with a family, there has to be an agreement to do no more harm. When looking at the best interests of families, there has to be forward progress with supporting kinship relationships, keeping children with people who know them, to include family as well as community, fictive kinship placements, and this means cultivating, supporting kinship relationships. Just as parents, foster parents, and adoptive parents receive this support, we need to make sure that financial support is provided to the kinship providers as well. Find ways to break down the barriers associated with kinship placements. We've seen that training does not completely weed out the bad apples, so training does not have to be a requirement to receive financial support. Caseworkers should be trained on how to complement and encourage kinship relationships. And doing this would include offering support, sharing resources, giving direction on navigating the system, and being able to be there for both the birth parents and the kinship parents. Kinship placements outside of child welfare involvement actually is more commonplace than you may think. Families take in other family members when trauma or separation happens. Who do you think is caring for that child whose parent is incarcerated? Who do you think is taking care of the children when their parents are deceased? The answer to both of these is kinship, family, friends, and community. In order to make it better, there have to be changes made in how kinship placements are viewed and supported. And so now we're going to talk just a little bit about child welfare professionals. I know you don't think we can tell y'all this because y'all are the professionals. But on the opposite side of this, we have some ideas, we have some thoughts. We feel like transparency is absolutely necessary. This includes trust, honesty, integrity, and definitely do not keep secrets. This can estrange relationships. Paula, would you like to tell of your experience regarding balanced placements?
Sure. We're all familiar with bounce placements with kids who are moving through placement because they don't know what's happening and they don't know how to respond to what's happening to them. So I was working with a family, serving a family through peer supports. And one of the children in 4 years, from the age of 5 on through 9, was in 9 different placements. Kinship care was the very first placement. All of the kids were in a kinship placement, and it felt like um, the kinship placement said, we're not getting the support we need and we can't keep the children. So then they went on to more disrupted placements, causing more harm. And now we have children who have bigger challenges than when they entered the child welfare system, and nobody wants that. Paula, would you share your story of kinship care?
Yes, I definitely will. And the thing is that one of the things I want you all to realize is relationships. I was a kinship placement of an individual who was a fictive kin. We were not blood related, but he was considered, quote unquote, a problem child within the system. And so they felt that he would not be adopted, so he would age out in the system. He decided he wanted me to be his placement. Only God knows why, because anyway. So here I am. I have him. But the caseworker was telling the mother, the birth mother, that she would never get her child back. She would never have custody of him again. They're not telling me this because going in, I told them I do not want another child in my house, point blank, period. I had child welfare involvement with my biological children. So I was like, not trying to do it. But what happened was the mother started treating me differently. And so I had to ask her, I was like, what's going on? Why are you tripping with me? And she told me, she said, the caseworker keeps telling me that I'm not going to get my child back, but I keep doing all of this stuff. And I'm trying to figure out, like, why am I doing this? And you're trying to get my child. Okay. Problem number one, they're lying. Problem number two, don't put me in your mess. Problem number three, four, five, six, seven, we don't have enough time for. So this is the thing. I told her, I said, well, hold up. I don't want your child. I'm just here, for this moment. And so she showed me the text where the caseworker was telling her this. So she was not lying. And so the caseworker had been telling me that I didn't need to go to court. She was like, unless the child wants to go to court, you don't have to go to court. Everything is all good. Well, because of this, I decided I'm going to court because I need to know now what's really going on because things are being said and done that are not what I agreed to. And so then I go to court and I became an advocate for the mother, the birth mother, because she was doing everything that she was supposed to do. And why tell them to do all of these things to get your child back and you don't get your child back? So as I started speaking to the judge started asking the caseworkers, is this true? Is this going on? What's happening? Guess what? This child got her child back. This child, I'm so sorry. This mother got her child back because she was doing everything, but the caseworker caused friction, caused additional trauma, caused all kinds of things that did not have to be if only they would have been honest and if only the caseworker would have been a companion in this. The caseworker actually ended up being like an enemy, and that should never be the case. That should never be the case. And this is another reason why sometimes people don't want to take children into their home because I don't want to mess up the relationship that I already have with this person. And so we've
Mhm.
got to do no more harm. We keep saying that. It's already traumatic when they come into care. Let's work on doing no more harm. We want to be understanding. We want to keep everybody abreast of what's happening, and we need to be flexible. I'm going to pass it now to Paula Beatty.
And I'm going to share a little bit about my personal story with the child welfare system that looks much different. And I want to acknowledge that it's likely in part as a result of the color of my skin. Just going to name it like that. Okay. So 28 years ago, actually this month, we had child welfare involvement after I had 2 overdoses in the house with the children in the house, all 3 of my kids, one who was a very fragile infant. So instead of taking my children, the social worker empathized with me and said, I don't even know how you're doing it with all you got going on. What do you need? And so she supported kinship placement, not just supporting kinship placement, but making sure that my family members had the resources they needed to support my children so I could go to treatment, so I could get my act together, so I could do what I needed to do. We got protective daycare, we got specialized support, they got respite care, so they could also still maintain their life. I think about what we spend it with for kids in foster care and high needs kids. I don't know what it costs where you live. Where I live, it's about $36,000 a year for a high needs placement in foster care, level 3. What if we took a fraction of that money to support kinship placement at the level that is needed to sustain it, right? So really looking at what do we need to do differently in kinship placement to be able to support families? And of course, eventually, because we had that benevolent support and a wonderful social worker, my children and I were reunited. We were reunified, and our story of recovery continued. So I'm grateful for that time. All right. Whew. Here we are, Paula Bibbs. So who has questions, comments? You can come off mute. Our great tech people will unmute folks. You can raise your hand. Like to take a look at the list. We won't be able to get to everybody. Can we have a time check? Where are we at with time?
We have roughly 14 minutes.
Oh,
So if
wonderful.
you have about 4 minutes. If you all have questions, you can put it in the chat or you can come off mute and begin to speak. Again, we don't have a whole lot of time. Okay, unmuting is now unavailable. So sorry. So is available. Sorry. So if you all would come off mute and just share if you have questions or comments very briefly, we would love to hear from you. Hmm.
I love the
So
comments here.
in the chat, Katie Byron said, it made me come very close to saying I wouldn't do visits at all. Finally, I said, I'm not writing you a report. If I see something that will harm the child, I will intervene and notify you, but I'm not writing reports to be submitted in court.
Mm.
And one of the questions is, how do
Mm.
you handle relative guilt?
Can you talk a little more about, Trina, can you talk a little more about what you mean there?
And as Trina comes off mute, let me just say that no, all child welfare agencies are not receptive to our work.
I always say they like me till they don't. They like it that I'm walking alongside this family and doing the things that they need to do, where they want to do, improving their quality of life. Because as a peer worker, so I'm a parent, peer specialist, and a peer specialist in the state of Wisconsin certified. And so my work with someone, my support of someone is directed by them, not by the system. So what is it that you want to work on? And if you want CPS out of your life, well, let's look at how you might do that. So you can look at your permanency plan. But my goal is not to make you comply.
Hello.
Trina is off mute. Go ahead.
So with relative guilt, I'm referring to like when a grandparent or an aunt or someone takes in their relative's child. And a lot of times what we see is they don't want to, apply for like TCA or things like that because they don't want to take the person up for child support because it will cause another hardship that's already caused by a hardship. And then I recently just had a situation where a relative did not want to say that their daughter abandoned the child. They was like, well, they dropped the child off and just never came back. And it's kind of been like that since they were born but they put voluntary placement. But when I called and heard more about the situation, I was like, no, that is definitely abandonment. But they don't want to say it because it sounds so harsh. So instead, she deemed it a voluntary VPA.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Trina,
Go ahead,
let me
Paula.
say this. Thank you. As far as relative guilt, it's not a whole lot you can do except for support the parents or support the placement, simply because we're gonna have guilt. And if you're dealing with families of color, we don't want to admit that there was abandonment. Why? Because now this child is in the system, and now this child has to endure A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z. And it makes it very difficult because we don't want our children in the system, because we know a lot of times the end result is not the same for our counterparts. And
Mhm.
so I think you just be caring, concerned, open, and honest. And as far as like child support, you have to let them know that's a support to you that the government cannot provide on its own. It's a support to you. Does it add a hardship? Yes and no. Because if the child was in the family's home, they would be supporting the child. It just wouldn't be coming out of a check and being sent to them. So it's the same thing, probably a little less, as far as financial support than what they would have if they were in the home. And you just try to be creative with how you may explain some of the things that are going on and some of the supports that are available, if they will do it. If they won't, you just support in the other ways that you're able to.
And does it really
And I
matter?
know.
Go
Mhm.
ahead. Go ahead, Trina,
No,
or
you go ahead,
whoever.
because we're going to transition shortly.
Great. And I would say, however a family wants to name what they're doing, their care for one another, let them name it that way. So while it might be abandonment, I also think about all the time I spent at my grandparents, because I had a mom who was very mentally ill too. And so I spent a lot of time at my grandparents when she was having her episodes, right? So when I think about now, it was a little different in my upbringing because my mom struggled with severe mental health. And then I also did and needed that support from my family, but it was a little more challenging. So in my realm now is grandma, and what a cool place to be, right? I get to be grandma. I am there for my grandkids. I'm doing transport all week. Great grandpa's doing transport today because I'm here with you, picking the kids up from school and getting them where they need to go. And when can we normalize kinship, taking care of each other, family, looking out for each other, and not be focused so much on perfection? If you look at my record, I have a hefty criminal record, 26-page rap sheet. I'm still a good caregiver. Okay, that was the old part of my life. So let's think about where people have come from and how much they've grown. We're not looking for perfection here.
Yes. Thank you so much for that, Paula. So we have two questions and we only have, I'm gonna say 6 minutes. Actually probably less than that. But we have a few moments that we would like to ask you all. And again, you're able to come off mute. But the first question that we have is, how do you help kinship providers navigate the system? And we ask that question because sometimes I think we give pamphlets and we give information at the beginning, and it's almost like,
Mhm.
dropping the baby off at the daycare that first day and not coming back until it's time to pick them up. That's hard. I don't know, how to navigate. I don't know what the system needs and things like that. But how do you help kinship providers navigate the system? You can come off mute and begin to talk. We would love to hear from you.
Oh, sweet. I see California came up with some legislation. I'm gonna have to take a look at that. It's crucial to listen to their needs beyond what they're telling you in plain words, right? And also what they're not directly telling you. And be cautious about how we come across with our own biases and judgment about that. Thank you. Yes, there. Madison says people who went through it can help others navigate it. So where are kinship providers available to support the kinship caregivers now? So past kinship supporting current kinship. Listen, support, encourage. Kinship navigator programs are important. Yes. Does everyone have one? If you don't, please check out the center website and figure out how you can get that going on in your state.
And one thing I think of, I'm kind of new to kinship, but I hear some of the more tenured kinship workers state things like, oh, I'm not going to hand walk them through. And I think it's about changing your mindset. It's not about you hand walking them through. It's about you walking with them through, and they haven't lived this experience before. We've walked with other people, and being willing to share your expertise, being willing to be empathetic, to reflectively listen, sometimes to just let them vent and then help them kind of get back on course, because it can be overwhelming for doing something you've never done before.
Yes, thank you for that, Keisha, because it's spot on, right? So when we think about, we would give that level of support to a foster home, to foster
Mhm.
parents, Why would we not give it to kinship, where the kids are going to be with and around family or in familiar surroundings with familiar people? Good. So the next question then is, what resources and supports do you have in supporting kinship providers in your state or jurisdiction? You could throw it in the chat or come off mute. We've got probably about 5 minutes left. Georgia has kinship care unit. Go ahead.
Antoinette is, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Antoinette, and I'm sorry, I have a really bad cold, so I'll do my best. I'm from California, and many of our states still have a kinship support services programs, which are primarily county funded, but we're nonprofit organizations that receive referrals from child welfare to support relative caregivers. And we also support families who are not involved with the child welfare system to maintain the kids safely in the home without having them go into foster care. So it's a very, very comprehensive programming with an array of services. And we really do help with, I think someone mentioned the caregiver guilt. We really help through our support groups and case management, but we also make connections with the county social workers to allow them to understand the value of kin placements and the necessary supports, whether they're in the system or not, and really helping to ensure that there's a level of equality, particularly for those families who don't have the financial resources. So we have a major financial investment in helping to stabilize and support and maintain kids that are living with a relative. So a lot of the counties in California have those programs to provide that level of support, and also to connect them with county resources so that they can, if they go through probate, they can, get CalWorks or TANF to support the children. So there's a lot going on.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
And there's several jurisdictional implementations that are being put into the chat. And I just want to tell you all, thank you so very much. And don't be surprised if somebody reaches out to you, because we need it everywhere. We need these supports everywhere. We have 3 minutes.
We do have 3 minutes. Final thoughts. We probably have one more comment, time for one more comment, and we're going to wrap it up and send you on your way. Thank you so much for coming today. Final thoughts, Paula Bibbs or anyone in our audience.
Well, if you want final thoughts from me, my thought is, again, do no more harm. Let's remember that the goal, everything that we do, is for the safety of the children and the preservation of the family. And so if you're working with that goal in mind, it won't matter the race, it won't matter religion, none of that will not matter when you are working to preserve the family and to keep the children safe. So do no more harm. Back to you, Paula.
Sing it out. So we're so honored for your time with us today. And we really hope that you're able to utilize a couple of nuggets that were shared here today as you shift your child welfare practice. And thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
The Child Welfare Virtual Expo, CWVE, logo displays on the screen and is followed by this message. This video was developed for the Child Welfare Virtual Expo by the Capacity Building Center for States and is sponsored by the Children's Bureau. Its content does not necessarily reflect the views and policies of the Children's Bureau.